Welcome, I'm Derek Whitaker to Blue Sky Factory. This presentation is how to live your life purpose and fund it, understanding the techniques the wealthy use. Because when you start understanding how the wealthy do it as compared to how those who aren't wealthy, there's a big gap between, and this is about explaining this whole gap. Hey, look, before we start, I need to tell you up front, we're not a licensed financial planning, accounting, or law firm. We're simply an education company that gives you factual information. We do not give any general, specific advice around finance, business, investing, options, trading, accounting, cryptocurrency, or precious metals. That's not what this presentation, of course, does. For any general, specific financial advice, please see a licensed financial planner, accountant, or lawyer when it comes to specific advice that you might need. All right, who am I? Well, I professionally spent 14 years in media and then made the big leap from that into the finance industry. I consulted to high-end accounting, law, and financial planning firms. At one point, I was actually a director of an accounting firm, which I never saw coming, particularly after my media career. I always felt like that was a bit of a nerdy sort of situation. But yeah, look, in media, you're kind of looking at popular media and how to appeal, and it's about popularity. And the going to that kind of role was kind of a big leap. Director of an international property syndication. I've also been an educator on trading and wealth for well over 12 years. Wrote a stock options trading course for a registered trading organization, Mentor Education, back in the day. And I also am the founding director of Blue Sky Factory Trading Institute, and I hold a diploma in financial services and a Bachelor of Arts. Now, why does this all matter? Well, this is the big key. I sat in high-end accounting and law firms and watched how money actually works, and I realized how little of it I had been taught coming out of high school. And jumping from that big media gap from media into the finance industry, I was like a kid in a candy store. I wanted to know how things worked. I felt this is what's been missing in my education. And my first thought was, if I'd known this in my 20s, how different would my life have been? I was doing this around my mid-30s. And that is why I teach. And I've discovered that a lot of people are in their life purpose. And this is the price that we pay for the work we hate. Take a look at this, all right? It's been discovered in a national salary survey conducted by the Australian Institute of Management that 4 out of 5 Australians are unhappy at work. In other words, 80% of us don't want to be there. Walk down a street, count 5 people, 4 of them are waiting for the weekend and starting to plan it already. Escape from the labour. And that's a big concern to me, especially when you're using up 40 to 60 hours of your week doing that, not doing something you enjoy. Think about that for a minute. When they go, they don't come back. And the people that pay for it are the people that are close around you too. Your spouse, the kids, the dog when you come in, or the cat. Kick it when you walk through the doorway if you're miserable. 81.9% of people, when they actually leave a workplace, they leave in search of new challenges, okay? Half of them leave because, well, they see no career path in the place that they're staying. And 44.4% leave cooking and looking for better financial rewards. Now, when financial times get more conservative, that number drops on the 44.4%. People start to, stick with what they know. But that is based on an analysis of 25,000 employees across Australia. That's huge when you look at those stats. Now, this is what it costs a business to replace one employee on average. $26,410, and I believe that figure is growing and growing. When someone leaves, they take part of the business with them, what they learn, what they were trained in, what they worked out for themselves, and that experience is gone. It's a missing piece when they leave that place of employment. So it's costing people, a lot of employers and business entrepreneurs, a lot of money. And of course, the people closest to you pay for it, right? You come home, frustration, doesn't stay at work, walks in the front door with you typically. Money is a misery's expense. It gets spent on things that leave nothing behind. And that's really, really, really concerning. And then time, especially I've seen this so many times, the fly in, fly out parents tell me the same thing. They're missing their children growing up. They miss out on those little precious moments when they take the first step or when they say their first word, or when they start to have their friends come over. And the problem is that once time is gone, once you spend it, there are no refunds on it. It's one of the most expensive assets you have, precious assets you have, and you need to use it in a leveraged way, right? And this is one of the secrets of the wealthy is they create systems around them that help them leverage their time. They'll spend a lot of time building systems to take input and then get a certain output. And that's what's one of the keys in terms of how the wealthy work. They know that time is very, very precious. Now, it's really interesting. When you heard Richard Branson speaking in CNN in 2011, the best businesses are born out of frustration. And Virgin Airlines came out of his own frustration as a passenger. He said, screw it, I can do it better than you. Branson's other rules make the workplace somewhere where people want to be. And that motivates staff and give customers a better experience every time. And I don't know if you've watched the flight crews on Virgin as compared to other airlines. They tend to be more inspired, more happy, very bubbly. There's a big cultural difference in working with them than other airlines. And it's really, really important to note that. And so that's sometimes where some of the best businesses are coming out of. What's also interesting, how different businesses are born, such as like Uber, for instance. It took assets of other people and that were lying dormant and just wasting and losing money by being depreciating assets, cars, vehicles, and said, well, we can do this better, and totally disrupted the entire taxi industry just through the internet. They'll say, we'll take a smaller cut, give the drivers the best thing, and we'll cost cut for the customer as well. So it's really interesting how that frustration can lead to great things. I've found that if you're not living out your life purpose, there's a restlessness inside that exists until you find it. And you can go for years trying to find it and search for it. And until you discover it and start moving into it, well, it can get very, very frustrating. And that's because you were not designed to just put food on the table, okay? You were meant to do so much more. And until you start stepping into it, that restlessness remains until you find out what is your life purpose. Part 2 of this is ancient wisdom on money. I want to just look at a story contained in the Bible that's really, really critical. There's an old phrase that says, but godliness with contentment is great gain. So earning money for the sake of money is not just going to do it for you. I've seen people plateau because they reach to a point where their life purpose has kind of stopped and they're trying to figure out the next phase for them, the next chapter of their life. But look at here. Here's a great little clue as to how it all comes. You want great gain? Well, you combine godliness with contentment, and you've got a great combination there. That is great gain, all right? And I've noticed that when you pursue that, the wealth follows. In every firm I've worked in, one thing was constant, from the person on benefits to the person earning more in a month and most in a year. I was working with traders that were making $30,000 to $40,000 a month. They all had the same thing, from the guy who was on unemployment benefit to those traders. You know what that was? They all wanted just a little bit more. And so I concluded that just a little bit more money was not going to bring the contentment that they were after. It was never money making them content. It was something else. And when there is a purpose that's greater than you, it motivates you to reach higher, to go further. It's not just about navel gazing and sitting there on an island with a laptop lifestyle drinking pina coladas, okay? That's often sold in the seminar industry, and I think it's such a small thing because no people will go greater than that. If it's just self-serving, it will always be capped. But when I've hung out around very wealthy entrepreneurs who are wanting to change society, I have noticed that when they are working beyond themselves, they're talking not millions, they are talking potentially hundreds of millions, even into billions in some situations. And that is a completely different space to be operating in. The master, the servants, and the talents. This is a great story, and you'll get it and pick it up from Matthew 25, verse 14, right through to Luke 19, 12 to 27. What happens in this story is a master goes away and entrusts his servants with money. Now, the metaphor here is it's God going away and we are the servants. And what he's doing here is he's giving each according to his own ability. So this is an important clue as to how you are designed. Some of you think, oh, it's beyond my own ability. I can't actually do it myself. No, it's actually according to your own ability, what you've been given in this life. And the key is to multiply it. So to one he gives, of the 3 servants, 5 talents, another 2 talents, and the latter one, 1 talent. And it's really fascinating what happens to them in this process. Now, talents back in the day was a lot of money, sometimes being interpreted as being 5,000 coins, gold coins, that is. And if you look at today's prices in gold, it's a lot of money. That's the whole point. Now, the person who was given 5 talents happened to double it to 10 when the master returns. And he reports of this, and the master says, "Well done, that is fantastic. I'm going to give you more." The second one, he doubles it to 4 talents. Well, in terms of percentage wise, it's done just as well, okay, according to his ability. And he presents that to the master and says, "Look, I've doubled what you've granted me." And there's the one who basically was given 1 talent. And what does he do with it? He buries it in the ground. He says, "Sir, I knew you to be a harsh master, and I was fearful of the reprise of what you might do if I lost it. Therefore, I buried it in the ground." The master gets very angry at him and says, "You've got to be kidding me. Basically, you could have given this to the market, put it in the bank and got interest for it, right? To the money makers and got some of that back, some interest on it, and that would have been better than what you did." And the consequences are absolutely huge here. He says, "Right, take what was given to the 1 talent, give it to the person who has 5 and has doubled it to 10, because we'll give them cities and they will now be in charge of so much more." And so it flips and it says, whoever does not use what has been granted to them, it is lost and given to someone who will. And this is such a key understanding because it ties in not just your management of wealth, it also ties in what you'll do with your life, what your life purpose is. And the consequences for the servant who buried it in the ground was that he was not only lost that talent and that money and that opportunity, but was cast into outer darkness. When I read that, I mean, it was like far out. The consequences of doing this, of not utilizing what's been granted to you, is massive. So, as the one of the three did nothing what was given him, this servant, the story is really about. And my question to you is, what are you going to do with what you've been given? It doesn't mean that you have to do double backflips, triple flops, and all that funny gymnastic stuff. Again, remember, it's to each according to his own ability. What are you doing with what has been granted to you? So critical in this time. There's an expectation for wealth to grow. We grow in a universe. We live in a universe that scientists say is always expanding, always growing out there in outer space. And so that model shows how we need to be always multiplying, always growing. It's not to be preserved, not to be hidden, but to grow, to be managed properly. And as I said, look at the universe. It grows at a really, really fast rate. Look at a family, right? A couple fall in love, have children together, they multiply. Look at anything alive, plants in your backyard if you're into gardening. And if you plant a seed, it is to multiply. Growth is the design. Stagnation is the problem. And so many people I come across have fallen into stagnation. They don't know how to get past the 9 to 5, the job that they're doing, the job they hate. And they've fallen into a trap. What typically happens is that they've grown up. What do you want to do with your life? Picked a career path, fallen in love, got into debt, buying a house, buying the cars, and now they've got to pay all that off. Kids come along, and they have to, of course, pay for the school fees and the upbringing of these children. And they're getting to anywhere from their 30s to 50s, and they go, if I keep on this continuum, I'm not going to reach where I want to do. And they're waking up going, do I really want to do what it is that I'm doing? And that's a big problem and a rut. And stagnation is a problem when they stop growing as well. And they just scroll their life away on social media and other platforms. What is it that you're actually looking? Are you watching the cat videos, or you're watching things that are actually helping you grow? See, more is added to those faithful in a few things too. That's an absolute nugget there. If you can't manage hundreds, how on earth are you going to manage thousands? And if you can't manage thousands, how on earth are you going to manage millions? Money has a habit of moving to whoever looks after it best. And there's a golden nugget there for you, all right? It's those who look after it best. They are the ones that more money is attracted to. And so what is really important is, are you doing the little things? Some people think, saving 10% is just kind of beneath them, right? Why should I save it when I can spend it? Well, that's a problem, because at one point you're not going to have anything to show for it if you continue doing this. It's just logic, right? But some people, they can actually invest, even if it's $5 a week, $20 a month. I've heard of one situation recently where somebody said they were saving, all they could save was $20 a month. And they did it. And over time, that grows, okay? Or they invest it. Even better, they are investing that $20 and it grows. And that is really, really incredible when you think about it. Those who are faithful in few, right? More is added later. The other lesson that we want to look at, he who does nothing loses everything. So the servant who buried it didn't lose it through a bad decision. He lost it by making no decision. Doing nothing is itself a choice and it carries a consequence. I'm shocked when I hear how many people put their lives on hold because they're planning to retire. And when they reach that retirement point, then they are planning to live. And I think that's a very dangerous way to live life. I'll tell you why. Nothing's guaranteed. Okay, I remember one situation, the global financial crisis, when the markets just crashed and crashed and crashed. I had so many people ringing and complaining about their financial planners at this time, saying, I can now no longer afford to retire. I can't do it. I'm going to have to push my working life out. And they said, we're bemoaning, if my financial planner had put me into cash, I would have been better off. Right? I could have managed it better myself. And this is the big, big gap in terms of not knowing, all right? Lack of knowledge. My people perish for lack of knowledge is the ancient wisdom. And that is so, so true when you see it in these situations. The other thing is people who put their lives on hold till they retire, there's no guarantee of health. How do you know you're going to be able to do what it is you want to do? Life situations can come up, right? Aging parents or a child who needs help, right? Even if they're an adult, some health situation hits them or tragedy. There is no guarantees in that. So putting your life on hold to a certain day, I think is incredibly, incredibly dangerous, all right? The person who wants to write the book when they get older, well, they have no guarantee that their eyes are going to be at a point where they can read small writing at that point. That may make it difficult for them. Now, I'm not trying to say, listen, you shouldn't try these things and plan for the future. No. I'm saying what is dangerous is when you do nothing. And that's also, you can see how that flows into finances as well. The one who does nothing loses everything. The one who doesn't live their life purpose or do their assignment is at risk of losing everything. Stewardship is the whole point here. Giving matters. So does stewardship. The world needs you to do its life purpose. I once heard a very wealthy millionaire say that. The world needs you to do your assignment. Okay? I remember one time where there was many temptations to stop this business, very much so in the early days. And then years later, like 11, 12 years later, I remember one of my students making an incredible amount of money. And they had gained what they'd learned through our teachings and applied that. And I thought to myself that day when they had closed out, and this was a 6-digit figure. I mean, we're talking a lot of money. And I sat down and I thought, thank goodness I didn't quit. Thank goodness I kept going, because it wasn't just about me. It was about the community around me. And so my point is this: whatever you do affects the community around you, your customers, the people that come to you, if you're known in your area of expertise for advice. Okay? It matters. And stewardship's the whole point here. Are you stewarding your talents well, your time well, your resources well, your finances well? Treat what comes through your hands as something you're looking after rather than something you own is a real key too. Sometimes I've found that if you are looking after someone else's resources, sometimes you'll do that better than your own, because you go, there's a bigger responsibility here to do that. Some people are the opposite. If it's theirs, they'll manage that better. But apply what it is that's really important. And I think for me, in this whole story, the master comes along and gives it to them to steward. And I've realized in life that for me, I don't really own anything. You come into this world with nothing. You're born butt naked, right? And at some point, you're going to leave with nothing. You can't take it with you. What you do leave is the community and how you affect others and the generations, okay? But the real point here is you're stewarding it for someone else, the master. And you'll manage it better than you manage your own. There's a greater responsibility. And even if you deep dive into that, there's a compulsion to go, you know what, I've got to do this better than it's just for me. And I get back to my point of the lap lifestyle that's often sold in the seminar industry, where they're basically going, hey, it's navel gazing. drink the pina coladas by the pool with your laptop, make lots of money. It gets capped. But when you know, hey, there's a life assignment here that I need, a community needs me to do this, you will go and do things that you normally wouldn't do just for yourself. It's incredible how that works. Money is simply a tool to do good by. And you want to write that one down because a lot of people have hang-ups about money. I was speaking recently to some friends and they grew up thinking money was really, really bad, okay, because they saw crime and evil happen around them with people using that money. Anything can be used for good or evil. Technology can be used for good or evil. The internet can be used for good or evil. Radio can be used for good or evil. Television, good or evil. Artificial intelligence can be used for good or evil, okay? Money is no different. It's actually neutral. It's the heart of humanity that's the issue. And so if you have a good heart, if your heart is in the right place, well, guess what follows? How you use that money and how you apply it. And that comes with any technology you may use or any resource that you may use. But that's a real nugget there. Money is simply a tool to do good by. See, when you're living your life purpose, everything else falls into alignment. You then begin to understand that I need the resources to do this assignment. You don't mind the early start and getting up. You don't mind the late finish. The sacrifice stops feeling like a sacrifice. You're going, this is part of what I have to do. This is what helps define me. This is my assignment in God. I've got to do this. And the difference is amazing. There have been times in my business where I've had to do long hours, right? Early starts, long hours. Not because it's a burden, but it's actually, I've got to build this and build the rails to do this in this season and build it out. And you can see the benefits of it long term. Let me give you an example. Recently, I put a lot of technology into what we were building in our business. And what it took was a process of onboarding a student. It used to take hours, even a couple of days for students to get back to me, hand in the forms that they needed to fill out for a course or something like this or an assignment they were going to do, and then email it back to me, and I have to follow up with phone calls, all this sort of stuff. I built the rails where I can do it in minutes over the phone. Hey, let's do this. Bang, bang, bang. Got that email? Yep. Got the link? Bang. There you go. It's all there done for you. And so you're building a system around you that helps you derive your assignment a lot quicker. So did it take a lot of time to build that out? Absolutely. Lots of long hours and sacrifice to do it to save time later down the road rather than waiting for hours for that process to do. It can be done in minutes. And that's really understanding the key. Okay, part 3 here, what the wealthy do differently. There are 12 differences and none of them are luck, all right? That's really important to understand. People think that they're just going to wake up one day and have a windfall. The wealthy actually strategically plan for this. Let's dive in and see what they do differently that the poor don't. And a lot of it is just understanding how the game is played. First of all, there's the mindset. Okay, wealth creation is a process of executing a plan, knowing things will come up in life that you don't plan for, but very often the thing that comes up is you in the way you operate, think, and process stuff. So are you open? The wealthy are open, always scanning for opportunity. When bad things happen, things that are a bit of a setback, most go, oh dear, this is terrible. The wealthy go, all right, where is the opportunity in this moment? That's really important to reframe the way they look at things, all right? The second thing they look at is they're improving. They're constantly investing in themselves. They're constantly buying things to help them. They'll do mentorships. They'll do coaching stuff. They will do courses. They are wanting to invest because they understand their skill set is what gets the output. The other thing they're always doing is self-worth. They know what they bring and they price it, okay? They have no issue in understanding what is a good thing to buy for themselves in terms of value, all right? Now, let me just say one caveat on that. I do know a multimillionaire who will not buy coffees for himself. He maybe have one. He won't go through the drive-through and have one a day. He sees that as a luxury and a waste of investment for him. Now, he's a multimillionaire, okay? He can afford buying a coffee every day, but he doesn't. Why? Because he understands the value of what that does. But in terms of him flying to the other end of the world to help other people go into their life purpose, he'll do that out of his own pocket and expense. He'll mentor these people because he wants to input into their lives. And it's created for him an incredible network around him where he talks to people in their top fields, and because he does this. So he knows what his self-worth is, all right? And they know what they bring and they price it as well. And they're unafraid of failure. Failure is information, not identity. It's basically going, okay, this method doesn't work. You know, the old light globe sort of discovery where how many times Thomas Edison had to experiment and come to the formula of this does work. Each failure, inverted quotes, was one step closer to success. And that's what you've got to understand in business is, right, if you blow it, if that didn't work, okay, we just know that doesn't work now. Let's try a different one. Let's pivot. And that's the key point in business, being able to pivot. For example, 80% of trading is mindset, 20% is technique. That is something my first mentor taught me. Okay? He said, Derek, the actual pressing of the buttons and doing this and doing those actions, that's technique. The strategy, technique. 80% of it is up here. You have to live with the markets. You have to process that information. You have to think through it. That's where the hard work is done. The man who got paid 3 times for the same bees, clever entrepreneur, what he did was basically, most people ask, what will it cost me to start a business? And this case study was really, really fascinating. I watched him. He asked, how do I get paid to start? So what he did was he put an advertisement out there with the bees and said, listen, I will get rid of bees that have landed in your backyard. So he put himself there as a pest control person, right? What he wanted was a hive because he wanted to be able to do his own bees. So he'd advertise as a bee removalist and would, pocket about $250 a job to take the unwanted beehives out of suburban backyards. The mums worried about their little Johnny getting stung by a bee. He went and solved that problem. And that's the key to remember here. Business owners solve problems. That was the first problem he solved. Then he produced the honey. He was paid to produce. He sold the honey those same bees made, and he sold it to neighbors, families, and friends. He didn't want to launch this as a full-time business. It was more just a hobby that he wanted to do. So he was paid a second time. And then after a few years, he got tired of it because it was too hard. People wouldn't want to pay him and all this sort of stuff. And he didn't really want to bother with it and following it up because he was making greater money in his other businesses. So what did he do? He put an advert out there and years later sold the hives for around $450 each to people who went through that process thinking they had to buy bees to start. So just thinking of reframing, how can I get paid to acquire what it is I want? Really different mindset. And most people only ever made money at step 2, right? Whereas he made it 3 steps of the way. So it's a great case study, an example of how wealthy people think differently. Every business does exactly one thing. It solves a problem, all right? And that's really, really important to understand. It's a good one to write down. Petrol solves getting people from A to B. A bicycle solves transportation. Boredom and exercise all at once. Bike can do a few things, all right? Yeah, you're bored? Right, get on a bike. Go from A to B. Get some exercise. Uber, as I mentioned earlier, solved a stale industry by monetizing cars that were sitting in driveways, losing money for their owners and doing nothing. They said, well, how can we use these assets? So finding the underused asset, that's where the opportunity is in many situations, and understanding that. We'll use other people's money. That's one key that the wealthy do. Let's use other people's money. And in the case of Uber, that's exactly what they did. Let's use other people's assets, cars, vehicles, 4 wheels, and let's utilize it. The second thing that the wealthy really understand well is they know their own power and their legal rights. Let's understand something about law. This is the order of things. This is how the legal practice understands things. God created man and woman. Man and woman created government. Government creates public servants to serve the public. That's the order of how society should run, okay, in Western world. And there is a legal practice of innocent until proven guilty. And that's a principle worth knowing and worth standing on. Knowing where you stand, you're in a strong position in that situation. The ones who lose are the ones who don't know. And what's subtly trying to happen with society and socialism is guilty until proven innocent. And that's a dangerous, slippery road. But our entire legal system is based around that principle of innocent until proven guilty. And the wealthy know this, and they know their legal rights, and they work with their lawyers on this as well. Unless there's evidence, hard, concrete evidence, there isn't a case. And so this is often what the wealthy do too, is they create a trail of paperwork that proves their innocence as well, so they can disprove those who are subtly coming up and saying guilty until proven innocent. This is the world we're starting to operate in. But knowing their own power, knowing their legal rights, really, really important. The third thing that the wealthy do, that the poor don't, is they have a very high self-esteem, I've noticed, and they invest in themselves. They think of themselves worth something, and they put money behind that. And they also understand that if they are to do what they do, a lot of people are reliant on them to do that, whether it be employees and their families. They also know their customers are reliant for them to do this. So they will do things like invest in courses, masterminds, subscriptions, advisors, because they realize that one piece of information can be the missing piece, the nugget. One of the things I've noticed is, and I've done these courses before, and in areas where somebody else is a little further down the path than I am in certain specific areas, because once you get into finance, there's so many different little nuances about it, and that's in any industry for that matter. But I've realized that, it can be just one little nugget in that makes all the difference in the results that I get. And so that's really, really important to understand. They will invest in themselves. They also understand how money works, and they aren't emotional about it, okay? And this is the big thing. People get emotional about their money. If you come to frame money as a game with rules, it changes, all right? Because most people like playing games. Most people enjoy that. You get on I used to work in the media, in the radio industry, and I would go on the radio. One thing that used to help me is, can I beat my last score? In other words, there's thinking in media, you're only as good as your last shift, your last performance. And I understand the pressures with all of that and where that goes. But the thing was, what I'd do is I'd go in, can I beat my last score? Well, money is no different. If you can go in there and go, you're doing a business enterprise, or you're doing something else, can I do better this time? And the thing is, if you don't know the rules, you can't play well. It's like a game of basketball. If you rock up to a game of basketball and you've never played it before and you don't know the rules, well, you're not going to get very far. You're not going to win the game. Most people buy on a tip, panic on a dip, have no plan for either, right? So they get a tip around the water cooler. Hey, have you heard about this stock? Right? And they buy, or they panic. Oh, I've got to do this. Or they'll sell on dip, and they have no exit plan for when profits present. A professional decides the risk before entering, not after. All right? They already have a well-planned strategy on how to manage that risk, and well thought out. It's like the pilot who goes into the simulator. In their training, they are planned for every emergency. Oh, an engine's gone out. Oh no, now it's on fire. Oh, you hit a bird. Oh dear, there's bad weather coming up. How does that pilot handle that in the simulator so that when it comes to real life situations, seconds matter, and they can make those decisions as far as how they've been trained and go through those motions? A professional should be no different. The wealthy, in their area of expertise, should be no different. The other thing that the wealthy have around them, the poor don't, is they have very good advisors. Good advice costs more and saves more. All right? There's a story of someone who balked at a $5,000 accounting fee. They came to him, they had a problem, and the lawyer accountant said, I know the solution to it, but it's going to cost you $5,000. And they're like, what? And I said, fine. If you don't want to pay it, that's fine. You keep doing it because it's going to cost them millions. So they said, all right, I'll pay it. They paid the $5,000, and it saved them millions. Cheap advice is the expensive vice. You pay for it later. I had a family member who was balking at paying an accountant, and they could get it for a lot less elsewhere. And I said, don't go with them. Don't go with a cheap accountant. Don't do it. It will cost you more later. Sure enough, months later, they complained to me about the tax bill that they shouldn't have had to pay. What did they do? They went to someone who wasn't in their expertise. It's the cheap advice that costs you more. What would you rather do? Give your money to the advisor, the accountant, or give it to another larger body that costs you so much more? People forget that. People don't think commercially. So, having a team of good advisors around you that can work with you is absolutely critical as your wealth grows. The sixth difference that the wealthy do that the poor don't. Well, the wealthy are more conservative than you might think. The assumption is that they take wild risks, and I would argue that the opposite is actually true. They research until they understand it, and understanding is what lets them control it. Risk lives in the things you didn't look into. Let me give you an example. When I discovered that options trading, you could actually metaphorically insure shares, I was like, tell me more. That's right, metaphorically. So what I understood was I could buy an option on a particular stock, and let's say the stock's trading at $20.20. I could buy a particular option, and if that stock went lower in that time frame that option was viable for, let's say it went to $15, $10, even $5, I could still lock it in at 20 as to terms of what I could get paid. Or even at the point where if the company went out of business, I could still lock it in at $20 over that time frame. Now, most people think that those options are dangerous. And yeah, there are certain dangers in it if you don't understand what you're doing. But again, risk lives in the things you didn't look into. And that's really, really important to understand. The seventh thing that the wealthy do that the poor don't is they control rather than own. Don't own it, control it, is what I say. Get over the obsession of owning things. Owning things outright invites lawsuits and tax, unwanted tax. However, controlling gives asset protection, tax efficiency or minimization ability through structures that work locally or internationally for profit and not for profit alike. And that's really, really key. This is how the wealthy do it. They own it. They don't own it. They control it. All right. So get over owning it. I almost said they own it. Get over that obsession. They control it rather than own it. The eighth difference the wealthy do is they run their finances like a business. Why would they do that? Well, a business is more streamlined, it's more efficient, it's more tax effective than a household, all right? People think they're entitled to things. You know, I've worked hard this week, therefore I'm going to spoil myself and buy that bottle of wine, right? That expensive bottle of wine, or I deserve it. I deserve it. If you find enough justifications throughout 1 year, more than maybe one or two, guess what? You're not going to have much to show for it at the end. In fact, if it gets more than one per year, that's a dangerous place to be in. The wealthy, though, organize their money the way a company organizes its money. They look at it, it's not their money. And for this organization to progress, they've got to be very efficient with what they have. The ninth difference that the wealthy have is they understand the banking system and its history. For example, the borrower's servant to the lender. Knowing how the system works, how it came to work that way, changes how you deal with it. And students often find this is one of the most confronting parts of the course that we do. Because when you understand how it has been created, oh my goodness, you realize how fake the system is and how fragile it is. And again, it leads to, okay, this is a game. Finance is a game. If I can have fun doing the game, I understand there's less at stake. It helps people when they, have people debtors chasing them for money. It helps them when they understand what's at stake. And they really can then remove the emotion from the actions and the processing of what's actually going on. And when you understand how the bankers have done it over time, you realize what a created thing this thing we called money actually is, all right, and how it works. All right, a couple of other differences that, the wealthy and most people have is this. Most people will earn, then they pay tax, and then they live on what is left. The wealthy, they earn, they pay for their costs of living, and then they pay tax. All right? So it's same income, different order, and they're ahead before they begin, and it's entirely legal. All right? Most people earn, pay tax, we call that post-tax income, live on what's left. The wealthy, they earn, they pay their costs, then they pay tax. That's what we call post-tax income, all right? Pre-tax income, post-tax income. Most do post-tax income, the wealthy do pre-tax income, all right? So they earn, they pay for the cost pre-tax, and then they pay tax. And that's a big advantage over because they have more to utilize, more to invest, more to do with other things. They can grow it a lot quicker. And guess what? It's entirely legal. The wealthy also, and I've let this cat out of the bag for this one earlier, they use other people's money. The Uber example is a prime example of this. They use other people's assets to actually make money. Property syndicates, joint ventures, structured deals, using other people's capital spreads the risk and opens doors a single balance sheet can't. There are strict rules about how you may do it, which is exactly why the education matters. The whole insurance game was about using other people's money and structuring it in such a way that there was less risk. What they would do is, instead of putting all the insurance on one boat, many investors would spread it around a fleet of 9, 10 different ships, right? And that way the risk was spread, so that if one boat did sink, they didn't lose all their insurance money on that one ship. And that's kind of how that's been used for centuries in terms of spreading risk. The 11th difference between the wealthy and the poor is the wealthy know the 3 pillars of wealth. And I'm going to include another category in this that you may not have considered. But those 3 pillars are business, property, and trading. And within trading, I'll even include cryptocurrency, which is an emerging technology that is now becoming mainstream. And we call that traditional finance becoming new finance. But almost every money-making idea falls into one of those 3 categories. And knowing how they relate and when to move between them, that's a skill. The timing of things is also very, very important. Get the timing wrong, and it might be the right action at the wrong time doesn't get the right result. It's the right action at the right time that gets a great result. And that's really, really important to remember. The order of things is so critical. But if you hear about wealth creation, those 3 areas are generally the categories they fall in: business, property, and trading, which includes, of course, the cryptocurrency markets. The 12th one, the wealthy pass it on properly. Most Australians don't realise that there are taxes waiting when you die. And they're trying to introduce more laws to that, and the idea is being floated around. And smart accountants are already planning ahead. If those things are passed, there are legal ways to pass wealth to your children. And that's the difference between 1 generation and 3. Knowing how to do estate planning properly is absolutely critical and sets the next generations up to be able to take advantage of that in a good way. So, where wealth has always been made, business, solving a problem at scale is really the key to understanding that, right? That's all a business does, is solve a problem. I want to hang up a picture on my wall. What do I need? I need a hole. How do I need it? What do I need to find the hole? I need a hammer. I need a drill. I need a nail, or the screws to put in. That solves a problem at scale. That's what a business is. That's why there are hardware stores. Property, hold and leverage the asset, right? People need to put a roof over their head, okay? And then there are commercial properties as well. People need a place to conduct business from. Trading, profit from the movement, any direction, right? Most people think one-dimensionally with trading, that it's buy low, sell high. Okay, which is often a property mindset. But in our training courses, we show how people can make money in any direction potentially, whether it go up, sideways, or down. Those are only 3 ways the market moves: up, down, or sideways. Only can go 3 directions. So that's really, really important to understand. Active income, well, it asks for your time. You actively go to a job, you've got to do sweat, blood, tears into that. Passive income doesn't. It's making money in the background for you, and understanding which pillar you're standing on, how to move between them, and which strategy you're applying. That's the whole game there, right there and then. And moving into situations where passive income and multiple passive income streams are pouring money into you without you having to spend the time there is really an ideal situation to move towards. So, if you've learned something today and you want to take action on this, we teach you Building the Wealth Foundation, 20 weeks in a small group, a different environment. All these foundations and how they practically can apply. When you start learning what's out there, it's what you don't know that often gets you into trouble. And this course reveals everything that you should have learned as you're coming out of high school but didn't. The things that have been kind of kept from you. In this, you'll discover which external factors have been shaping your behavior and making it hard to get ahead. Number 2, what mindsets have blocked your ability to build wealth, how to push through them. Number 3, what the wealthy actually do to set up their wealth and pay as little tax as the law allows while getting incredible asset protection in the process. Number 4, practical financial models that can be applied to an ordinary situation help you see a difference. Okay? And you'll also discover the 3 pillars of wealth, where wealth has been made historically and why that repeats. History has a funny way of repeating itself. Number 2, how the wealthy protect their families financially and prepare for financial storms. Number 3, strategies that use to increase income, work less, and build more than one stream of cash flow. And number 4, how to operate in the preferred economy, how our entire financial system operates inside the current one, which is a Babylonian system built on a system that was created back in ancient Babylon. And the key for most students is moving out of that Babylonian system into the preferred economy. See, this is the difference when it comes to the seminar industry and the self-improvement industry. They found statistically, this is why 4% of the success rate is out there, all right? 20 weeks and not a weekend. Seminars, most people, the statistically they know, who go to seminars, only 4% of them will actually succeed at what they're doing. So if you flip that on its head, that means that 96% of people who walk into a room are fired up, but walk out a couple of weeks later, nothing's changed. And the problem is they're using to that skill, that willpower alone to try to get the results. So they found, I've heard somebody talk on this, and it's a brilliant example. You know those fat farms they used to have, where you lose weight in just a short pace of time, and people would go on a farm and they'd be with the trainers, the doctors, and getting all the encouragement and transformation they need all in one place. At some part in the show, they send them back to their old way of life, the old kitchen, the old desk, the old crowd, the old environment. And they start noticing that those people around them are overweight. And it's because, it doesn't undo itself. Not a character flaw, it's the environment. So what we do with our students in all our processes is we put them through an environment where they begin to change and transform. And if they want to, after the 20 weeks in small group, want to be involved in other ways, they can. 20 weeks in a small group shows up every week is the environment that you do, because you're working at a layer. You're constantly around people who are like-minded and encouraging you to move forward. All right, so how do we move forward? Well, the course for Building the Wealth Foundation is $3,445. It's 20 lessons over 10 weeks, live online in a small group. What we do is we give you a few lessons, a couple of them, 1 week at a time. And then we come together once a week and workshop those lessons to make sure you're fully understanding what it's about. I can identify very, very quickly any gaps in your understanding, and it also keeps you accountable. I found that people who do online courses on their own motivation and willpower alone, they don't end up finishing. So you know that when you show up for the live workshop, I'm going to go, hey, how'd you go with the week's lessons? There's some accountability there for you to finish in a very, very good time frame and pace. If you need a payment plan, that's available on request, so the cost is spread across the 20 weeks rather than landing in one go. You need to apply to enroll, and if the application isn't accepted, guess what? We fully refund your funds, okay? No problems there. Here's what we guarantee, all right? We got to warn you. Fair warning, you will not be able to look at money the same way again. I've tried to go back to the old way of doing things. I couldn't, all right? Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. So if you don't want to change, this is not the right course for you. If you want to change, well, guess what? We can help you through that. But we do warn you, you're not going to be able to see money the same way again. If you don't want your perspective of money change, this isn't the course for you. And that's a perfectly reasonable decision to make. I get it, all right? If you have a happy life and you don't want to change, the pain's not enough for you, I got it. But I usually find that when people get to a point where the pain's enough, then they're motivated to change. Why not do it before you get to that pain threshold? Why not do it, be in 5 steps ahead there and actually learn this stuff so you don't have to hit that pain? That would be the most logical thing to do. I got to warn you though, before you decide what we are and what we're not. Very transparent about this. Blue Sky Factory is an education company, all right? We are not licensed financial planning, accounting, or law firm. So nothing in this presentation is financial product advice in this course. Nothing here takes account of your specific objectives, financial situation, or needs. For any general or specific financial advice, please see a licensed financial planner, accountant, or lawyer. All right? Really, really important to do that. So the question is, are you ready? Are you ready to step forward and take this on? Well, there's the link in the video right in front of you there. You can click on the buttons below if you're watching this embedded in our website. If you have any questions, all you have to do is book a free call, and you can do that through our website or email me, derek@blueskyfactory.com.au, blue with no E, blueskyfactory.com.au. Are you ready? Are you ready to take the next step? That's the question. I would challenge you with this and leave with this thought, because so many aren't doing it. Do your life purpose. The world needs you to do your assignment. Will you do it? Will you steward the talents that you've been granted?